Are you, like me, confused by the Silmarillion and the overwhelming waves and oceans of names and texts and histories and everything else? Well, then you're in the right place because we're doing a week by week read through of the Silmarillion as part of our Mondays in Middle Earth show, which has been going on for at this recording like 60 plus episodes now. And we are firmly into the Silmarillion now, having got a few weeks underneath our belt. And it is a confusing mess of names that mean next to nothing to a lot of people because they are so far back in Middle Earth's history that they're not part of the main story that is the Fellowship of the Ring, the Two Towers, the Lord of the Rings, and the Hobbit being the prequel to all of those, and the various film adaptations that we've gotten of those things over the years. I first read this when I was in my mid-teens. Last time I read it was in my late teens, and I'm a little fuzzy on a lot of the details, so we've been going through and re-educating ourselves. Now, this is not a verbatim read through. That would be a violation of copyright, but it is the way I do this is I read through the chapter, or I read through segments of chapters, and we analyze discussion points. We analyze lines of text and so on and so forth. And I ask questions because I'm not a Tolkien expert. But there are other people out there who know a little bit more than I do. And if you are one of those people, when I do the call out, please don't hesitate to drop your information down in the comments below because that's how this show works. We communicate and we have fun and we learn more about Tolkien together. Without further ado, when we last left off, we were mid chapter because it was a little complex. And we're in the middle of basically the creation of the first planet and the filling of that planet with life and everything else. And it says here, even as Olmos spoke and the rest of the Aenir were looking at the vision that he was creating, it was taken from them and hidden from their sight. Um, so basically, it's just a quick little preview of what's to come and then snatched away. And it says here that in the moment, they then perceived a new thing, which to them was foreign, and that was darkness, which prior to this moment had only existed in their thought, and that's it. They had never actually seen darkness before. Um, and at this moment, they realized that, being in the moment of the creation of the world and everything else, their minds had been, filled with that, but they realized then that that history was incomplete. Circles of time hadn't been completed for the planet, nor had it been completed when the visions were taken away. And so they didn't get a full vision of everything that was supposed to happen with that world. It says here that some have said the vision ceased before the fulfillment of the dominion of men and the fading of the firstborn. Um, that way, it says, even though the music is all over, the Valar had not seen as with the sight of later ages or the ending of the world. This caused unrest amongst the Ainur, but Iluvatar came down to them and says, "Hey, look, guys, I know that you want to. I got to decipher what is written here. I know that basically you guys want to see everything that you just caught a vision of come to fruition, but the realization of the way he says this is even as ye yourselves are and yet other. Let me tell you at this point, leave it alone. Let things be, and I will then send forth into the void the flame imperishable, which is that everlasting life, that ability to create life. It's just going to be at the heart of the world. The world will then take place, and those of you that want to can go down amongst the world. And it said here at this point, they then saw far off in the distance a light as if it were a cloud with a living heart of flame. And they knew that this was not a vision, but he had now created a new thing. So this is essentially, if you go back to the creation myth of the Bible, God saying, "And let there be light." And there was light, and everyone looked and said, "This is good." It says, Ular had made a new thing, Ea, the world that is. Thus it came to pass that some of the Ainur stayed with Iluvatar, but others, including many of the greatest and most fair, took leave of Iluvatar and decided to go down into the world. But he made a condition for this, and he said, um, the necessity of your love, your power will be contained and bounded within that world so that it is forever within it until that world is completely done. and you are of its life, and its life is of yours, and they became known as the Valar, or the powers of the world. So this is a very important creation myth for those who would go on to become known in many different places, because especially if you're watching like the Rings of Power right now, they name drop the Valar all the time. And this is a point back to who the Valar really were at the creation of everything. Essentially, they were lieutenants, angels, and went down to become guardians of the planet. It said here that they were confused, those of them who went down to Ea, if I'm pronouncing that right, the planet, because even though they had seen all of these things in the vision, the planet was unshapen, and all of it was dark. It says the great music had been but the growth and flowering of thought in the timeless halls, but the vision had been only a foretelling of what was potentially going to become. It says here they had now entered into the beginning of time, and the Valar then perceived that the world had been but a foreshadowing, and they were the ones who had to actually achieve that vision, and thus began the work, essentially. If this was a piece of paperwork from a lawyer, this would be where we'd have in parentheses, everything else from this point is going to be referred to as the work. Says here, so began their great labors in wastes unmeasured and unexplored, and in ages uncounted and forgotten, until in the deeps of time and in the midst of the vast halls of Ea there came to be that hour and place that there was made the habitation of the children of Iluvatar. This is really cool here because it's basically saying that they had to go forth and create the mountains and the rivers and the lakes and the streams and the animals and the wildlife and the flora and the fauna and everything else, and they had to make the planet and create it into this thing. They had to take it and craft it. And then until that place where became the habitation, it says, for the children of Iluvatar. It says this work was taken under by Manwë and Aule and Ulmo. But Melkor was there at the beginning a little bit, and it said he meddled in all that was done, kindling great fires and trying to turn the things that he could to his own desires and purposes. And therefore, when the earth was still young and full of fire and flame, he coveted that power. And he said to the other Valar who would listen to him, that over there, as I point with my finger, um, that's my kingdom. I'm gonna name that for me. It says here though, Manwë was the brother of Melkor in the mind of Iluvatar and the chief instrument of the second theme that Iluvatar had sung out against the discord of Melkor. And it says he then called to himself many spirits, greater and less, and aided Manwë so that Melkor couldn't block the work that was being done. And they wanted Earth to actually flower rather than wither away. And Manwë actually confronts Melkor here and says, look, man, you can't take a kingdom for your own. That's against the rules. That's not why we're here. Also, he says there have been a lot of other people here who have worked a lot harder than you have, and they deserve equally, if anyone's going to rule, they deserve equally in the spoils. And so this is the Cain and Abel, sort of. Not really, but sort of. Melkor gets pissed, goes off into other regions, um, but never put the desire of Arda from his heart. It says here, now the Valar began to take to themselves shapes and hues. And because they were drawn into the world by the love of the children of Iluvatar, for whom they had hoped, they took shape after that manner which they had beheld in the vision of Iluvatar, save only in majesty and splendor. So, created in his image, so to speak. What's up, everybody? Quick commercial break here to give it a shout out to our guild champions, who are the highest tier memberships here on YouTube: Ancient Entity, Assassin Gamer 94, Bubbleonia Rising, Crazy's Relative, Mujin, and Remedy. Thanks so much for the highest tier membership, and thanks to all of the members who support the channel, because you keep me doing this full time. You too can become a supporter if you're new here. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon so you never miss an update. Join as a member. There's 3 different tiers. We do lots of special stuff, private polls, private videos. You get a shout out if you're the highest tier membership, but you can also do one-off donations in the form of super chats on any live stream or premiere you see, and of course super thanks on any upload or YouTube short. Whatever you can contribute, it's great. Keeps me on the air full time, keeps the cats fed, keeps the homestead running. Anyway, back to the video, everybody. Dun, 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 dun. Says their shape comes only of their knowledge of the visible world rather than of the world itself. Huh. Says that means that the Valar can walk naked if they want, and even the Eldar cannot perceive them even if they are present. But once they clothe themselves, um, they can then be made visible. And they took upon themselves human, well, I don't want to say human, sorry, male and female shapes. Huh. At times they clothed themselves in their own thoughts, made visible in forms of majesty and dread, and they drew to themselves companions who labored together in the ordering of the earth. Huh. Melkor, it says here Melkor watched what they were doing and how they were walking across the earth with their powers in full display. Um, Content, lovely, glorious, blissful. The earth becoming a garden under their guiding hand. Its turmoils subdued as those raging volcanoes and shifting continents and cracks became solidified. And his envy grew. It's the jealous stuff, man. He began to take visible form as well, but because of his mood and the malice that burned within him, it says here his form was dark and terrible. And when he descended upon Arda, it was in power and majesty greater than that of any of the other Valar. I like the description here as a mountain that wades in the sea and has its head above the clouds and is clad in ice and crowned with smoke and fire. And the light in his eyes was a flame that withered with heat and pierced with deadly cold. And here we get the tastes of the first battles between the Valar and Melkor for the dominion of Arda. And it says here, of these tumults, the elves know but little, because it was so far back even in their own histories. Aha. So basically, everything that history has told about this is what the Valar wrote down and declared, because they were the victors, essentially. It said here, it is told among the Eldar that the Valar endeavored ever, even in despite of Melkor, to rule the earth and to prepare it for the coming of the firstborn. But even as they built things up, Melkor would come and destroy them. They would delve valleys, and Melkor would raise them up. They carved mountains, and Melkor would throw them down. They'd make seas, and Melkor would spill them. And there was never peace between any of them. And any labor they undertook, Melkor would attempt to either undo it or corrupt it. Said here, despite all of this, their labor was not in vain, because slowly but surely the earth was fashioned, made firm, and the habitation of the children of Lutar was established in the deeps of time and amidst the innumerable stars. And this is when we get to the end of that first part, and next week we're going to be getting into the Valaquenta, which is an account of the Valar and the Maiar according to the lore of the Eldar. So we're getting a slightly different perspective starting next week. Interesting. So I think my questions here is when they talk about the birthplace of the, it says the habitation of the children of Iluvatar was established at last in the depths of time. So this is the planet, right, of Earth amidst the innumerable stars. I don't really have any questions this week. That was a pretty straightforward chapter. Basically just the story of the formation of the earth, the Valar going forth and trying to bring into actual reality the vision that they had seen glimpses of when they were listening to the three songs. And then at every turn, Melkor is there trying to undo everything that they were doing and take dominion over it, because that's mine. I want that to be my kingdom. Classic tale of jealousy within godhood. Looking forward to next week. Love to hear your thoughts. Drop them down below. Like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon, everybody. Happy reading. See you next time.